Hey, what is up everyone? Today I'm going to be taking a look at this right here. This is the Warhammer 40,000 10th edition Ultimate Starter Set. And inside of this absolutely colossal box, two armies face off in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. That is the iconic Space Marines versus the absolutely awesome Tyranids. On the back of the box, that is the instantly recognizable Ultramarines versus the Tyranids Hive Fleet Leviathan. But for me, that is the Mortifactors versus Hive Fleet Volva. But before I get into what is inside of this box, I will mention that this video right here was sponsored by Games Workshop themselves, which is an absolute dream come true for me, because I've been building and collecting Warhammer since 3rd edition, that is over 20 years. And one of my most vivid memories is 2004's Battle for Macragge, which strangely enough was Space Marines versus Tyranids. So for me, this has come completely full circle. I will also mention this is the first ever fully assembled and fully painted box I have done, ever. So thank you so much to Games Workshop for giving me the opportunity and the time to focus on this and actually fulfill a New Year's resolution I made over 2 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, that I'd actually get some Warhammer done. So if you're looking to get into Warhammer or just expand your collection, this box right here is absolutely perfect, but this isn't the only one available. There is a whole bunch of choices for getting started in 10th edition. So I'll throw a link in the description to the Games Workshop website, and over there, you will be able to find the various starter sets that are available. If you're just looking to get completely started, just dip your toes in and try it out, there is the Warhammer 40,000 introductory set. Now this has everything you need to get started, literally everything. You get 2 squads, once again that is enough for 2 players to play, a squad of Space Marines, a squad of Tyranids, and this box even includes the tools for assembly, a paintbrush, and the paints. On top of that, you've got exactly what you need to play, a playmat, a measuring stick, and some dice. So once again, this is the simplest, easiest way to get into 10th edition. So if you're looking for a little bit more, there is the standard starter set. Once again, you've got 2 armies, so this is perfect for 2 players. This time around, you get a lot more when it comes to Space Marines, a whole lot more when it comes to Tyranids, as well as the mat, measuring sticks, and the dice you need to play the game. And if you want to go absolutely whole hog, there's this one right here, the Ultimate Starter Set. That is what I'm taking a look at today, so I'm going to briefly go over what's in it, because we're going to go in a little bit deeper, a whole lot a bit deeper, very soon. So inside of this, you've got 2 full combat patrols. That's pretty much 2 whole armies. A full army of Space Marines, a full army of Tyranids, and even better, you get some terrain as well. So you've got a fully fledged battlefield right out of the box. This has everything you need. It even has the full core rules, so you can go even beyond the starter point. But we're going to be talking about this a whole lot more. So if you do want more information or you want to grab any of these for yourself, I will throw a link down there in the description so you can check them out. Now let's get this thing unboxed. So on busting open this gargantuan box, you get a sea of plastic. This thing is packed, and I mean it weighs an absolute ton. It is so heavy. Now if you do build Warhammer, I will mention that this is pretty much a lot of what you would have seen in the big old Leviathan box. These are push fit miniatures, and they're all awesome. If you don't build Warhammer, I will mention that these do not require glue. So out of box, you can actually just snap these together, and they are ridiculously detailed. I'm not going to go through all of the models one by one, but there is so much in here. It is incredible. This is a whole lot of plastic for 2 people if you're building an army with a friend, and a ridiculous amount of plastic for 1 person if you're building them for yourself, like me, because you can choose which one you want. Underneath the plastic, we've got a cardboard divider with some great art on it. The things on the left there, you can cut those out for using as wound tokens and victory point tokens. I'll also mention that I've been collecting these arts for so long. I've got a big old pile of them. They're technically for dividing parts, but they're a nice little art piece too. Spelunking deeper into the box, and we've got all the bases for all of your models, small, medium, and huge. A little white envelope full of 10 white dice so you can get rolling straight away. Another bigger white envelope, and this has all of your reading material. First off, you've got the core rules, which is all the rules you need to know in order to play Warhammer 40,000. So this is just a stripped down, yet very detailed breakdown of the rules. Next up, we have the Warhammer 40,000 handbook. This is a whole lot going on inside of it. It's your lore, your instructions on how to assemble your models, background on both the armies in the box, and some real beginner-centric rules so you can really learn step by step how to play Warhammer 40,000. Next up in here, we've got a massive sheet of Space Marines water slide decals, which would make Katoki Hajime blush. And you've got all your iconography for various chapters of Space Marines, as well as your markings for your different squads and units. Two 12-inch measuring sticks for measuring out your movements and attacks. A double-sided fold-out gaming board with, well, as double-sided suggests, two sides. One is inside, the other one is an exterior landscape. And we do have two of those, so this is quite the large playing field right here. But that's what's in the box. Let's get it put together. So when it comes to the miniatures inside this box, these have to be built. So they do come on sprues. They need to be cut out and assembled. Cutting them out is super simple. You just need a nipper, snip them out just like so. When it comes to the assembly, we've got the mini figures themselves, Space Marines and Tyranids, and these are push fit. What that means is you do not require plastic cement to put them together. Of course you can use it, but you don't need it. They just clip together super simply, just like so. What I'm putting together here is the Space Marine Librarian, so that just pops together super simple like so. Now there is no rule that these have to look exactly like they look out of box, so you can convert them if you want to. Now what I play is the Mortifactors, which is just a second founding Ultramarine chapter, so they're just bones, skulls, death, and awesome. So in order to try and keep that little aspect, I did convert my librarian a little bit. So I gave it a bit of a skull-like face, as well as a bit of a psychic skull in his hand, like he's holding this skull of a dead, yet revered psyker. So yeah, you can either build them straight out of box, or get a little creative. Next up in here we have some terrain, which is one thing I love about recent editions of Warhammer and the current state of Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer in general. It's all of the terrain that is available. This is so cool for just building awesome battle scenes, for making your battlefield feel more realistic, or just for fun world building in general. So once again, these can just be popped together with or without glue. They're kind of modular, so you can build them in whichever way you want, but I just built them in the exact way that they're meant to be built for the particular tutorial missions in this box. The bunker here is definitely your centerpiece. This just pops together as a bunch of parts. We've got a roofer on it. I glued this so it wouldn't fall apart while playing. And you do have an option as well of having this standard roof or this destroyed version. You can have it open or closed, whichever you like. There's a whole bunch of options. You can close up the windows. And when it comes to the stockades, there is options as well. You can put these together in whatever way that you like. You can put them as corners like I'm doing right here, or you can attach them onto the bunker. Of course, the best thing to do is keep them as modular as possible, so you can always have a slightly different variation of battlefield to keep your games new and fun. So onto the part that has always been, to me, my Achilles heel. That is the painting. This is time consuming and can be a little bit on the difficult side unless you know the techniques. So I will mention that Games Workshop and Warhammer themselves do have a lot of awesome painting tutorials over on their YouTube channel. So if you want to check those out, you'll be able to find out how to get started straight away. There's also an app as well, which I use all the time. For my Mortifactors color scheme, I just went in, looked at the various colors that are in the app, picked out how to do the bone, how to do the black, and how to do the various details. I just followed it, and it was so simple, and it turned out super well. So check out those resources, definitely, if you want to ease yourself into it and learn the painting steps for how to paint your Warhammer successfully the first time. So after painting a bunch of kind of a set color, which is the Mortifactors, it's a little bit of an odd or unique color if you're choosing a Space Marines chapter. But when it came to my Hive Fleet, I really wanted to just try something custom. Something that I'm, well, both glad I did and I regret kind of slightly, because it was a lot of difficulty. So if you're going to be making up your own color scheme, you're going to need to do some test models first. I have various test models here, which were some of my older Tyranids, where I just tried to figure out exactly what I wanted. I wanted grey carapace with a kind of fleshy, soft underneath part, so it kind of looked like grey, but living. I wanted the shell to be black with a little bit of a contrasting color to the pinky purple, and because it was coming up to Halloween, I kind of wanted a Halloweeny vibe, and I decided to go for witch, hence the Hive Fleet Volva, which is the Old Norse for witch, which funnily enough nobody seems to use, considering that all of the different hive fleets tend to be based on various Old Norse mythological creatures, and the fact that these are essentially psychic matriarchal creatures means I'm surprised nobody went with witch. So what I settled on in the end is a pinky purple, a bluish green to kind of go for the purple and green witch kind of colors, and then I wanted to kind of go for an orangish base, which gives you that kind of pumpkiny-ness to go with the Halloween vibe. So in case you're wondering how I got this result in the end, which I am super happy with, it's not what I envisioned in my mind at all, but I am super happy with it. But in case you want to know how to do it, here's the recipe, super quick. I started off with the standard Wraith Bone Primer. I gooed some contrast Volupus Pink. I should have probably looked at the pronunciations of these actual paints before I started saying this, but that's the one I started with. Contrast paints, these are super beginner friendly, go on easy, dry with a nice contrast like their name suggests, and they're very fast and quick. Once that was dry, I dry brushed with Dawnstone to get my grey over that while still getting a bit of the fleshy pink underneath. I went in with a second light dry brush of Layer Administratum Grey in order to get some more highlights. After that, I went in with a little bit of this Carroburg Crimson shade just to bring out some of the joints, which got covered a little bit by the dry brushing, just to create more contrast. When it came to the black, I used Contrast Black Templar. This is great coverage, but at the same time when it dries, it does leave some nice highlights around the raised parts compared to other blacks that Games Workshop have, so it makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. I wanted my black to have a bit of a bluish tinge, so I went in with a little bit of Incubi Darkness in order to kind of give that effect. Now I had no lighter color than Incubi Darkness that I could use for edge highlights, so I just mixed a bit of Incubi Darkness with white paint in order to get a little bit of a lighter edge highlight all around the carapace, so it really stood out and looked nice and graphic. Once that was me McDonald'sing out all of the kind of quick thing across everyone, it's time for the details. For anything that was psychic and powerful, like the brain segments on the sides of the barb gaunts, I went in with the absolutely magical Tesseract Glow. For the eyes, I went in with a single dot of Flash Gitz Yellow, just a little bit of a touch. This might be hard to do, and if you do screw up something like this with the eyes, just get a shade like the one I have right here, and you can just dab that on over it, and it will kind of hide any mistakes. Next up, I used some Wraithbone. This was for detailing out all of the teeth, so just again, you just really need to touch the teeth. You don't necessarily need to paint them to make them look good and effective. Use the Wraithbone down on the hooves as well in order to be an undercoat for what I put over that, which was my favorite contrast paint, Skeleton Horde. So once the nids themselves were finished, it's time to get the base done to make them look like they're actually standing somewhere. To do this, I first went in with Mournfang Brown to kind of set a little adherent and dark surface for the next paint I was going to use. And that is the astonishingly awesome Technical Martian Iron Earth. This is a kind of crackled paint that turns into an actual cracked earth surface, which takes no effort at all. You just blob it on and it does the job for you. In order to kind of make this look a little bit more pumpkin orange, I hit it with a dry brush of Ryza Rust, and to dry it out a little bit more, to look a little bit more dry and ashy, I finalized it all with some dry brush of Tyrant Skull. And once that was all done, I went in with my Japanese secret weapon that I bring over from building Gundam kits, and that is this right here. This is the amazing Tamiya Weathering Master C. There's A, B, C, D, E, a bunch of these available, but what I'm going to use here is Orange Rust. This is a pressed powder of a pigment. So you just rub your brush around in this, and then you just kind of dry brush it onto whatever surface in order to kind of create a dusty effect. Now this to me really does bring your base and your model together, like they're running through that dusty earth and getting dusty. It gives a real realistic effect, and I absolutely adore it. And then just to top it off, I needed some tufts. I didn't really have any kind of truly dead deserty tufts, but I love a tuft, so I just went in with some kind of greeny brown ones, but it still gave a nice effect. At this point then, I felt they were missing a little bit of something, and that's when my wife came up with the idea of why can't their shells be glossy like an actual bug? And I was like, well, they can. So I finalized this all off with Technical Art Coat, which is a gloss varnish. I just put this on fairly heavy-handedly onto all of the back carapace, the back shells on all of them, to give a nice glossy effect, which really works a treat. Now they have this kind of dual finish kind of feel with the matte and the shiny. It just works really well. It looks nice. And that was the nids done. Last up then is the terrain, and I wanted this done kind of quick and easy, so I did it the quick and easy way. So I went in first with a spray of Grey Seer, just sprayed these down twice, which is a kind of nice bluish greeny gray, which works with the overall color scheme that I'm going with, as well as the kind of color scheme that's on the box. The next step is the typical shade step. I went in with some Nuln Oil. It's a black shade that you just goo all over the place and it will just bring out, or should I say deepen, all of the shadows. All of the details will super pop. So that was it for the dark parts. It was time for some light parts. So I went in once again with the dry brush of Dawnstone. So this just brings out all of the raised detail, and I just dry brushed it everywhere super quickly and kind of heavy-handedly, but it is terrain. It's meant to look a little bit in the concretey, armored kind of way, and that's the way it ended up. I decided to just copy the box for the doors on this, and I went in with some Incubi Darkness. That is it, I just went in with that. I didn't use any kind of highlights or lowlights, but I did want the doors to look a little bit on the rusted side, to bring a little bit of orangey color into it to contrast against that green. So I painted some rust into the recesses, starting with Mornfang Brown, and then doing some brighter, extra rusty detailing with Scrag Brown. And then in the end, I brought out that secret weapon, which is the Tamiya Weathering Master, and I did exactly the same thing. I just kind of dry brushed this all around the bottom ends, kind of giving a bit of an upwards gradation in order to kind of blend them into the ground, so they look a little more actually in existence in the universe when you pop them down on the battle mat, and it does that perfectly. This turned out so much better than I, well, thought it would. But yeah, now that they're built, it's time to play. So what exactly happens in a game of Warhammer? Well, of course, two sides throw down to see who wins, but how does that actually play out? So I was playing with the Mortifactor Space Marines, and my wife, who is a complete beginner, was using the Tyranids, which is great because it gave me the chance to kind of gauge how a beginner actually feels the new accessible 10th edition rules are, and the overall answer is very accessible and easy to follow, which is good. So what we played here was the first mission that I found in the rulebook, which is called Only War. And it is exactly what it says it is, Only War. Basically the whole objective here is it's 5 rounds, there's 4 objectives on the table, and at the end of every round from the second round on, you score points on holding those objectives. So first up is setting up your battlefield. I went with the simple battlefield that is inside of the handbook, which is this very symmetrical and very fair, super simple layout. That is the bunker in the middle and the stockades equidistant on the outside. Now, this time of year is great for grabbing stuff like this, which is just some battery operated lights. I buy these all the time to just throw in and around stuff to light them nicely. Put them in the bunker, turn them on, you've got a nice little bit of a glow, which adds some nice ambiance. Only War requires an attacker and a defender, so you roll off to see who's who. I got the attacker. As for the objectives we were going to use, we decided to just plop them equidistant once again. And as for the Space Marine objective, I just went with the teleport homer that came inside of the box. For the Tyranid objective, I went with a thing that I don't know what it is. Looks like some kind of vent that is a Tyranid thing that would have came back in my 2004 copy of Battle for Macragge. As for the last 2 objectives, we added some unknown alien technology. You take turns in placing your units in your deployment zone, unit by unit by unit, taking turns back and forth. And that means then it's time to play. So in Warhammer 40,000 there is multiple phases. The first one is the movement phase, and that is exactly what you'd expect it to be. You move. Warhammer has an I go, you go play style, so that means whoever rolled off to go first gets to move their entire army first and then go through the various different phases, and then it moves on to the second player's turn. Once the player has moved all of their units, it's on to the second phase, which is the shooting phase. Once again, you pick your unit, pick the weapon that they have that is long range, choose your target, and then roll off to shoot in order to basically kill each other. You roll dice to see if the hits inflict any damage, and then your opponent rolls to see if their armor defended against those hits. And if they didn't, they take wounds, take too many wounds, and then they're taken out of play. After the shooting phase, there's the charge phase, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Now it's time to charge into close combat. You pick a unit, what unit you want to charge, roll 2 dice, and that's the amount of inches you can charge. Got enough inches? You succeed. Otherwise, you don't. And of course, after the charge is the fight itself. So this plays out exactly like the shooting phase, but this time you're going to be using your melee weapons. Some units are good at shooting, some are good at melee, some are all-rounded, and then some are like this psychophage, which is like a hard nut to crack and never seems to want to die. The overall game goes for 5 rounds or until one side's army is completely defeated. At the end of every turn from the second turn on, you get 1 point for each objective you control. So whoever's on the objective controls that objective. This is something I almost instantly forgot about when I was just trying to kill, and that means I lost. My wife ended up with 5 victory points, I ended up with 4, and thusly, the Tyranids were the victors. So if you've made your way to this point, that means you've bought yourself a starter set, you've built it, you've painted it, you've played a few games of Warhammer, and now you are thoroughly addicted. And the question is, where do you go from here? So basically what you just played with inside of this box is referred to as a combat patrol. You had a combat patrol of Space Marines and a combat patrol of Tyranids. Now you could try yourself another army by doing the exact same thing. You can go out and grab a combat patrol of the various different factions that are out there. These are plug and play. You basically build them according to what it says inside of the box. You don't have to choose any weapons, you don't have to count up point values, you just get them built and throw them on the table and play. That makes it so accessible. None of the paralysis with trying to decide what color, what weapons you want in your guys. You can just build them and go and get a good feel for the various different armies. However, maybe you want to expand on one of the armies that you have right now, your Space Marines or your Tyranids. There are so many models out there, so many. You can build an army full of individual units, lots and lots of tiny little troops, or you can get into the heavy weapons like the Space Marines. You've got your dreadnoughts, your repulsors, your various different tanks, vehicles, and specialist units. Over on the Tyranid side, you got massive creatures. Absolutely huge, and various different elite ones as well, like lictors, etc. So there is so much to choose from. For me personally, I'm going to go for a little bit of both. I've got a few boxes lying around I've been buying over the last few years that I've never really gotten around to, but I do want to put a little bit more time into. There is also other games out there. If you like fantasy stuff, you've got Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which is more swords and sorcery. If you'd like to spend more time on small models, really like kind of customize them extremely, then you've got games like Kill Team where you work with smaller elite units and you can really personalize those individual units. There's so many different options. But anyway, that is it for the video. Thank you so much to Games Workshop for sponsoring this and sending me on a copy of the Ultimate Starter Set. Thank you to you for watching this video, and if you are interested in checking out more, I will throw a link down there in the description. You will not regret it. It's an absolutely fantastic hobby. Anyway, I will see you next time.